Well, welcome everyone to our first community of practice for our Leadership Exchange capstone projects. I'm excited that we have, hopefully every team is represented, even if your whole team could not be here. And then, basically the agenda today is going to be allowing each group to share out how it's going. What is the focus of your project? What kind of, I guess, change leadership strategies and tools are you thinking that you'll use as you go through your project design? And then finally, we'll have great discussion, engaging with our partner, Juliet, who gave us our lovely continuous improvement session not that long ago. If you have any questions, either for your peers, for Juliet, for our collaborative team, I think that as a group, we will really be able to get our projects off to a running start. So first, let's just go ahead and do introductions. Just for Juliet's benefit, I'm Lily and I work with the collaborative and CPE, so excited to be here. I will pass it to Stephanie.
Thanks, Lily. Hi, everybody. My name is Stephanie, and I work with the collaborative as well. I'm Associate Director of Transfer, and I'm here to support, cheer on, commiserate sometimes, but to support our capstone project groups. Oh, maybe I should pass it on. Okay. Savannah, why don't you go next?
Hello, everyone. I'm Assistant Dean of Humanities at BCTC, and I'm in Group 2, which is looking at adult ed transition to the community college. We haven't had a chance to meet yet, but that's what our topic is. And I will pass it to Amanda.
Hi, Amanda Stonecipher, Indiana University Southeast, and I'm in Group 1. I don't know if anyone else is in Group 1 that's here. First generation student belonging. Oh, and I will pass it to Matt.
Hello, good morning, everybody. At least for me, anyway. I'm Central Time. So, my name is Matt Purdy. I'm Director of Career Services at Murray State, and I'm in Group 3, the mental health option. And I'll pass it to my fellow group member, Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Vance. I'm the Dean of Students at Eastern Kentucky University, and I am in Group 3 with Matt. I'll pass it over to Leslie.
Hello, everyone. I am Leslie Maxley. I'm the Dean of Students at Bellarmine University. I'm in Group 5, and we are looking at first generation students and really financial outcomes really over the span of their college cycle and not just from first to second year. We've had one meeting already and working on scheduling kind of our next one. I will pass it over to Patty.
Hi, everyone. I'm Patty Dillon. I am Dean of Undergrad Education at Spalding University, and I am in Group 4. And we're looking at transfer and advising from 2-year to 4-year colleges. And so I'll pass it to one of the group members, Sandra.
Good afternoon, everybody. Sandra Kimberlane, Director of the Robbins University Center and Transfer at ECTC, also a Senior Fellow for Transfer with CPE. Group 4, pass to Chris.
Chris Jensen, AVP for Student Success at Western Kentucky University, and transitioning to a new position as Assistant Provost of Business and External Partnerships or something. I don't know. Just had to add more words to my title, I guess. So I'm in Group 4. Thanks. Vince?
Right. Hey, first of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. My name is Vince Bingham, and I'm the Director of Career Services here at Kentucky State University, and I am in Group 5, Financial Aid. Let's see. I just hopped on here, so I don't know who's gone. So I'll just throw it up to somebody.
Is K-Hob, is that for Rebecca Johnson at Southeast? feel like sometimes she has a colleague attend. Okay, well, perhaps I think, Juliet, are you our final?
I might be. Hi, everybody. Nice to be back again with you all. I'm Juliet Price. I'm the, well, I suppose now is as good a time as any to say it. We've launched a Center for Post-Secondary Improvement at Nash, solidifying and expanding Nash's work in the improvement world. So I guess like Chris, this is like a fun little, title change. So I guess I am the director of that new center, but mostly just an improvement lover at heart. So happy to be back, guys.
Amazing. Congratulations, Juliet and Chris. That's great. Wonderful. Okay, so I just want to take 2 minutes, 3 minutes to just set the stage a little bit, kind of tying a few pieces together for our capstone as we're moving forward. The first thing that I wanted to share is just like overall the purpose of this particular community of practice. We have 4 meetings over the course of the summer mostly, and we will be bringing in one of our expert speakers and presenters to join us for each of those so that you can kind of just share how the process is going, where you may be experiencing successes as well as challenges, and then get some advice from each of our 4 presenters and speakers who do this from A to Z. So they know the entire process. We just ask them to share a slice of it to kind of put the pieces together and give you, access to, I think, different perspectives and, different voices as we have gone through. So really excited to be able to offer that back to you as we are now in action. I also wanted to share a little bit about the value of this capstone experience. I think, as I've been through leadership programs that are focused on new techniques for making change and for building relationships and collaborating effectively, it has really hit home the most when I go out and do it. And I remember my first position in this work, in 55,000 Degrees in Louisville, I was leading it, but then when I took a position change to Bellarmine, I came and I used a lot of those exact same processes within my own ecosystem. To think about experiential learning across the entire university or whatever your topic may be. There's a way that you can apply it in your daily work as you're thinking about everything we do is collaborative. Everything we do involves more than just us and our department or team. And so here we have a real opportunity to apply the different tools that we have learned about through this process, through this program. And so I hope that as you're thinking about how am I going to address first-gen students in financial literacy, that you're not just thinking about it from all the things you already know really well about financial aid and first-gen students, but you're thinking about it from the lens of the change leadership tools and strategies that we've talked about. I know some of the conversations Stephanie has shared with me, it sounds like folks might even already have some really good ideas about things we're going to do and strategies we want to implement. But I just want to really encourage you to think about your process for getting to those strategies and solutions, and really take the time to convene your diverse stakeholders, understand your current state picture, build trusting relationships with your partners, understand the student voice and experience, and kind of then you will know if those initial ideas and intuitions you have around your solutions are going to be the right fit for the right people at the right time right now. And even if you get through 1/4 of the process wheel and you don't even get to the catalytic project piece, if you have been able to go through the exercise of applying 3 or 4 of these tools and concepts, that is a success. And so, the success of this capstone overall doesn't have to result in I've moved the needle, in X or Y or Z. Like the real goals of this is so that you can practice some of these maybe new approaches to, design thinking and continuous improvement and those types of things in real world examples in your daily lives. So I don't want there to feel like this project is a pressure project for impact. You know, this is a learning experience. And this is just like experiential learning that we have our students do so that we know that they can apply what they're learning in the classroom to their real world jobs. And so here we go, everybody, metacognitive. So I just want to encourage you to really think through your process as we're going about this, and that there's no wrong approach, but we certainly would love to help remove barriers or challenges that may come up as you're working through. Okay, any questions at this moment as we dive in? Okay, so we can go group 1 to 5 today, and then next week we'll go 5 to 1, or the next COP we'll do reverse order. We'll kind of mix it up, who gets kind of to go first, second, third, etc. But you know, kind of generally, if in 5 to 10 minutes, your group could share out, or maybe that's what do we have here? We have about 30 minutes for 5 presentations. So let's try to do about 5 minutes or so on an overview. And because Juliet actually taught us the AIM statements, you know, really kind of thinking through your AIM statement as one of the big pieces that's going to anchor your future work, she can certainly give us a lot of great feedback on how we're doing at fleshing out these really smart AIM statements. But any other ideas that you want to share about your process, any other questions or concerns that you have about next steps, feel free to throw those in your little overview. So I'm going to pass it to Amanda. You look like, did anybody else join that wasn't in our original introductions? I see Kasha, I see Barb. Do you want to do a quick introduction, Barb?
Yes, if I can find my screen. Hi, I'm Barb Whitmore from Owensboro Community and Technical College, and I work in student affairs.
And Barb, you're in group 3, right? The mental health?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Kasha?
I'm sitting in for Dr. Rebecca Harrett Johnson and from Southeast. I'm Kim Hobbs, so I'm just kind of sitting in, just taking notes for her. She had to be somewhere else at the moment.
Thank you, Kim. And I know Rebecca's in group 2 on the adult education transition.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. Kasha?
Kasha Miller, Bluegrass Community and Technical College, Associate Dean of Student Success and Retention, and Group 2.
All right. All right, perfect. All right, well, let's go to Group 1 for an overview of your project.
Hi, everybody. I will set the stage that this will be short. I was unable to attend the first meeting with our group. I had the privilege of traveling abroad with IU, so I didn't want to turn that down. But in terms of group 1 and in the notes, it talks about the AIM statement, and even from our in-person meeting, the statement is how our conversation really surrounded it based on our group members around community college students. And through that conversation, we collectively realized that the differentiation between community college students and even students at a regional campus or at Bellarmine, very similar behaviors, right? Depend. So, but we focused on community college students at first. Is my sound okay, or is there feedback going on? Okay. Not sure if someone's unmuted. So our statement is, how might we incentivize engagement for first generation students at a community college in order to increase fall-to-fall retention? And what our community college partners and colleagues shared was there's no requirement to attend onboarding or no requirement to really go through training for their LMS, right? For Blackboard or whatever LMS is used. But what they noticed from some of their data was that students who do participate in those activities typically are retained at a higher rate. And I shared for our campus, we see similar data, right? Even if it's not required. And so, so the project currently is looking at the incentivization of that. And I know from that poster session, the gallery walk we did when we were in person, we had really great feedback from all of you what's the engagement to attend class? Some of the questions were, is it just for which community college? And so I believe at their last meeting, they're actually thinking maybe Bellarmine would be the project host because of some of those earlier questions we had or similarities between our campuses in terms of students. And then really the question is like, why will it increase retention? How will it increase retention? Were some of the other notes in terms of feedback. So that's where we're at now. And again, I'm sure my teammates who are not here have much more information to share, but I wasn't able to attend our last meeting, and I'm been checking in with them on kind of a group thread chat to see where we're at. But open to any thoughts or like ideas, or if you all have like things at your campuses, you're like, here's how we already look at this, and maybe it could be applied to a project would be great.
Oops, thank you, Amanda. So we'll get to kind of an open discussion on feedback after we kind of run through a quick overview of the 5.
Okay.
Does group 2 want to share? I think Savannah and Kasha are both with us. And Kim, if you have insights.
We haven't met as a group since the convening. Is that true, Savannah? And I wasn't able to participate in that. And we're not getting a lot of, we couldn't even get other members to complete the poll to find a meeting. So getting participation consistent is right now our first challenge, regardless of project. Okay. So that's just point blank. The project ideas that we had, like our aim statement, was to increase the number of students who transition from adult education to post-secondary programs through a free, it's almost got to be a free, this one said a free focused FYE class for adult ed participants at one of the KCTCS colleges. That was what was originally written. I'm thinking any kind of bridge program and or some kind of incentive program to work with what's going on with David Potter and the Kentucky Adult Ed and his programs about transitioning to college. It's following up from those programs at the institutions. But of course, there's a lot of complications there because his program's open to anyone who wants to transition from adult ed. And that means they're going to go to a whole variety of institutions. So we don't have a consistent pathway through that program. So without a lot of extra conversation, unless Savannah has something else to add, we're not far. We're struggling. How's that? Because otherwise it's just Savannah and me, and we are both at, well, no free time.
Thank you so much, Kasha, for that overview. Okay, we'll dig in. I'm sure that you're not alone in some of those challenges. So the next group, if we can get an update from group 3.
I'll go ahead and tag in since I'll be the host site. We've changed our aim statement dramatically since the convening when we met. And so our new aim statement is, and we're still tweaking it, how might we empower students with basic needs and security living on campus during the summer? And we're looking at some different approaches to that. I have a group of students that are housing insecure that live at EKU during the summer. And last year we did a family meal program for them. So once a week, we gather them together. We have catered meals. It's meant to bring a sense of community. And last year the goal was we try to encourage a sense of community and also get them fed. And so this year we're trying to level that up. My camera just kind of randomly shuts off. we're trying to level that up and get feedback from them about their needs throughout the summer and invite other hosts in to the meals. So each of the meals is sponsored by a different college or program on campus. So there'll be a college dean there, maybe some advisors or faculty at each of these. And I want to be more strategic with who we're inviting to address basic needs support and give them a better understanding of the resources so that they feel like once we get into the fall semester, they can start to find these things and navigate these things themselves. And one of our group members said that it feels like more of an adaptive study, which was kind of cool way of looking at it. And so that's where we are right now. I'm ready to kind of start firming up the aim statement and then developing a process throughout the summer that we can use. And then Matt, Barb, if you all have any more you want to add, chime right in there.
I think you got it hammered out.
Okay, great. Thank you, Laura. How about group 4, transfer and advising?
Find the audio button. It's in a different place than on Teams. So I always start in the Teams location and then have to go find it on Zoom. So I'm gonna say we're closer to 2 than everybody else. We originally wanted to do a really cool activity where we got with students in the spring semester. And
Sandra, is the volume low for anyone else?
Yes.
Okay, it's very
You
hard to
started
hear.
out great, dropped off.
I'm gonna have to lean close to my computer and turn my heater off. Okay. So I'm gonna say we're closer to number 2 than the other groups because we had a really cool project in mind where we were gonna work with students in the in the spring semester of their first year to go ahead and start committing, not like, you know, a contract, but start committing to a school so they can get in with them and get their information and be on track, basically. Kind of like a athlete signing type thing, but with less formality and no actual contract. And so that was all great, except now we're going to be trying to do these projects in the summer and we have no faculty or staff in the summer. And so we're having to pivot dramatically. And the closest we've gotten is to think of some kind of transfer advising summit or convening or something to help work on some of the pathways between KCTCS and the 4 years. But that's as close as we've gotten because there's not a whole lot we can do without faculty and students. So we really basically have nothing, especially if we can't do meetings as part of the grant work. So.
All right, thank you for sharing.
And Chris and Patty are on too. I think those are the other 2 team members if they want to add anything.
You covered it well.
I'll put your old aim statement in the chat, and then it sounds like you're still really in the development phase of how do we need to pivot because of our time, our peak window for doing stuff. All right, what about group 5 on first generation students in financial literacy?
I can go and then Vince maybe chime in if I miss something. We met last week to work on, I think we're still general. Our aim statement was to think about how we can better understand the costs and options for first generation low income students throughout, again, the college cycle, looking beyond just their first to second year. We've talked a lot about like who would be the host institution, and we still haven't nailed it down. But Vince is helping make a connection with Kia. So we thought maybe we're going to try to have a conversation with them to see how we can partner and kind of make it maybe scalable statewide, thinking about the education or awareness or wherever we kind of land on, we thought maybe Kia would be a really good partner for us. So we're going to try to have that conversation maybe this week, although it's winding down. So
Yeah.
it may be next week, but Vince is helping us with that. Again, we talked a little bit about process, about what type of tool. So we thought maybe journey mapping would be a good tool for us, really initiating some students. So we want to, because we talked about a lot about, we understand our roles on campus from like student accounts and bursar and financial aid, but students don't necessarily understand those roles, and we have a lot of expectations for them, and we may just need to go back down to the basics and like teach them really kind of our language first of all, and for families. So we definitely want students a part of that process to help us understand the gaps as we try to close them. So we did think about how students can be a part of this process. And then just looking at our notes, we start identifying some of the gaps of, just thinking about the life cycle, that there will be tuition changes every year, but do we really explain that to students? Do we really explain different courses have different fees? And so as much as you try to budget, depending on what your major is, each year that fee bucket could look a little different and be a little bigger each year. So again, the gaps and trying how to explain that to students. So we started that conversation a little bit through that. I think that was good. I think that was, yeah, that was about the end of our notes. So I think we
Yeah.
had some really good brainstorming about a lot of different pieces of the project, about like where it kind of should be housed and who our like external partner could be. Thought about our different institutions and who may be the better to host. And then we threw Bellamy out there. Really, because we was like, you can kind of get around over here, and U of L was like, I don't know if you can get around over there. And then it was like K-State could be good because we could get around there. So that's really, but then we was like, Kia may be our ultimate partner. And so we did talk about that a little bit. And then we talked about just a little about what tools that we could possibly, that we have learned that we could use in this process. And so I think we had a good first meeting. And again, we hope to meet soon. Vince, I'll leave anything.
Really quickly, we made contact with Miss Cassie Benedict over at Kia. She's one of the program directors over there. She was on board with what we wanted to present to her. So we're in the phase right now where we just sent out a doodle poll, and we're just trying to get everybody into a meeting. So but they were really excited about this collaboration.
Oh, good.
All right, that's great. Well, thank you everyone for sharing that brief overview. Juliet has a question. So we have a final meeting in August 8th, and that is when each of the capstone teams will kind of share your project design, your aim statements, what your process looked like, how you moved through, how far you got, and where you are. So that's kind of what the timeline looks like between, April, May, June, July. So about 4 months. And I know that some of us are still waiting to have that first meeting, and others have maybe had 1 or 2 under their belts. So, maybe effectively 3 months for some to kind of really get a couple of things done. Okay, so I guess now that we've had those brief overviews, I'm going to turn it over and we can just have, open discussion. Colleagues, share with one another ideas, similarities, challenges, ideas, for how to overcome those. And then of course, like Juliet, please, we'd love your thoughts on kind of where we are and what might be some tangible next steps for groups, especially if anyone does share kind of what a challenge or hurdle they might be facing right now.
I'm wondering when we might get feedback on our aim statements, make sure that we're headed in the right direction. If that's a today thing,
Stephanie, do you mind kind of sharing a little bit about the check-in meetings with each of the teams? Because I think that's a great opportunity to review and give any feedback on the aim statements. Has that been happening in those meetings, or is that something that it would be good to have a follow-up in order to make sure we have strong aim statements?
Yeah, for sure. So we've had 3 of our 5 capstone groups meet. I think those all took place last week, and that was groups 1, 3, and 5. And then I followed up with groups 2 and 4 to schedule a check-in meeting. So during our initial check-in meetings, that's exactly what we did. We revised our aim statements. We looked at the project outline that was shared on Teams, depending on how far teams got with regards to their aim statements, of thinking about other partners who may be involved in this work, especially because we know it's an iterative process. So if we have additional supports or contacts and colleagues at our host institution, they may also shape and add additional nuance to our aim statements. And ultimately, we were refining the statement so that we could also support the upcoming MOA developments and establish those contracts for the grant to be shared with the host institution. So I do think it would be helpful to review as a group. I know, Lily, we had compiled the draft aim statements ahead of this meeting, and you had shared them in the chat again for folks to review. I also recall that at our in-person pre-convening for the summit now in February, which seems like a lifetime ago. Chris, maybe you would raise this, but the difference between like a how might we statement and an aim statement, right? So being really specific and thinking about maybe even SMART goals as a reminder to, indicate maybe what your timeline might be, what your baseline versus intended kind of goal might be, right? When Juliet had presented on aim statements in our, I think it may have been our 4th module together, right? There was a example of a transfer aim statement, the percentage increase, thinking about what is not just desirable, right? But also what is feasible and sustainable, right? And being able to talk through things like following the process rather than jumping to a potential kind of test of change that we're really interested in, as well as the scope of our statements. So recalling our previous conversations about taking students out to coffee, right? What are we comfortable with experimenting? And yeah, how do we make sure we don't bite off more than we can chew? So again, it is 4 months, not to say that the work can't continue afterwards as well. But yeah, I think each group, I would say, is, at a different stage of implementation. Some are really locked in their aim statements. Some are, again, waiting for some additional feedback and revisions. Some groups had everybody attend, ready to go. Other groups struggled with the scheduling a little bit more. So yeah, I think these meetings at our COPs will be helpful for sharing feedback with each other. Does that help, Lily?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So please, groups, I hope you can get with Stephanie soon, if you haven't already. And I do want to kind of frame a few general questions that it sounds like we might have in common. And then Julia, get your thoughts and insights. So one of them, it sounds like, is, we have diverse campus stakeholders here. They're from diverse campus institutions as well as roles, and they're trying to come together around what is the issue that we agreed to work on together. And so I think that there's, timing that's impacting some of this, who do we have accessible to us? So they're really thinking about the context as well, that they're going to be working in over the next several months. So just welcome any insights on how do you find the right scope of an issue, the right focus for an issue, that will allow our teams to kind of move forward, and be successful in the way that they're designing it to be. So it doesn't have to be a specific preconceived idea, but how can each of our groups really move forward based on where we are right now today? That's kind of my first tool or first question, recommendations on that.
I'd also maybe offer Barb, if you want help thinking through your aim statement. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you want a little kind of like, should we talk through what you've got up and where you're thinking of going? Like, would that be helpful too? Because I know sometimes just almost like as a group, that might be helpful to do that, but not putting you on the spot, Barb.
Well, and I don't believe that ours is quite ready yet. Would you guys agree, Laura and company? Matt?
Right.
So-
Ours is definitely worded as a how might we statement. And so I was in the document kind of playing with changing that to measurable with, goals and things like that in the document. It's still definitely not there yet.
Right.
But if you scroll down, Barb, you can see in the box, the one that I've been playing with is the second one in our notes box there, the second highlighted line that says by August 2025. Matt, you too.
Sometimes a helpful exercise can just be when you're thinking about your aim statement. Sometimes I just call it like the newspaper headline, right? So everything from now until August goes incredibly well. Like, what is the headline on, your local paper, right? It's not, you never want the headline to be like, people met a bunch, did a bunch of work, tried really hard, right? You want the headline to be 45% reduction in suicide attempts at local college, whatever, right? Like, that's, so sometimes it just helps you to put yourself in those shoes of like, what would we want the headline to be? How does that, and I'm obviously just making something up, but like, what is that outcome measure that you care about, the community cares about, community broadly, right? Like the campus, administrators, what is the thing that you're trying to get to move? I think, at least looking from the draft statement, that was, and I totally hear you, Lara, this might be a couple ones back, but right, how might we equip instructors with response models for responding to students with mental health related concerns in order to increase confidence in responses? So like, obviously the interplay of like mental health, instructors not being mental health professionals, but what are you trying to have be different? Is it, right? Like, what is it? Is it number of students having mental health crises that require intervention? Like, what is the thing that you're hoping will change if all of this goes according to?
I just tossed the new draft in the chat there, Juliet.
Oh, perfect. Students
I
with
don't
basic
like the
needs
word feel.
chemistry school feel or confident. Okay. So this is, okay, great. So this is great. And Laura and Barb and Matt, like, as long as you guys are comfy with me doing this, right? I think this is a big, I see this a lot, right? We want to increase a group of students or patients or whatever, accessing some sort of service, right? Is that actually what we want? Is that the outcome we're looking for?
And then how do we measure that? Right? Is that part of it?
Let's not jump to measurement just yet. So let's get out of this example. Let's get into another, right? Does the IRS care how many times you log into TurboTax? Do they want you to access TurboTax more? No. They want you to pay your gosh darn taxes, right? They don't care if it takes one try. They don't care if you're Juliet Price logging in at 11:30 p.m. last night, right? Like they don't care. They want you to pay your taxes, right? So yes, you have a hypothesis here, right? And I think this is the stuff to kind of like start. Your hypothesis is if students feel more confident in accessing these mental health supports, something will happen, right? But what is that thing that you want to have happen?
Is that retention?
I mean,
Could be.
ultimately we want to retain them, but we're trying to consider this in the scope of what I want them to be fed and feel like they belong on campus more and that they have a community of support. Because we know those kinds of things will retain them. And honestly, my touchy-feely side, even if it doesn't retain them, if they leave here, I still want them to leave feeling like people were invested in me. And if I ever want to come back, I can. But I feel like people cared about me.
Yep.
And yeah, right. But measuring, well, again, we're not talking about measuring. Sorry.
No. This is great, Laura, where you're going. So I call these two things concept land and measurement land, right? You got to hang out in concept land. You got to get a concept. Your concept is, you said it perfectly, right? Like people who have their basic needs met will do better. We'll just do better, both as just humans and also as students. There's probably some retention. There's probably some attendance. There's lots of things that you could be looking at, right? So then once you're in concept land, you got a concept in front of you, then you kind of have to hop over to measurement land, right? How do you measure that? Do you today have date? Do you ask all your students, do you have a sense of belonging survey or something that you could look at and say, today only about 50% of our students say they feel like they belong on campus? Does that exist?
Well, there's a greater campus-wide survey, but one of our, as we talked in our meeting, one of our thoughts was some surveys throughout the summer of this group of students to get a few different measurements on those kinds of things. Yeah.
Perfect. Excellent. So you've got a way to measure it, right? So you've got your concept, which is generally meeting basic needs. You've got an accompanying measurement. Now it sounds like you may not have baseline data to go back on, but that's okay. Like don't, start where you are. Don't get wound up about that. If you can ask them, ideally like once, not the minute they get there, but early on and then periodically over time to try and get a sense of, are you moving the dial? That's great. You've got a concept, you're going to meet their basic needs. They're going to feel more, they're going to feel more secure in whatever. You guys have much better words than I do for all this. You got it. Like, so that's that can be your aim. Like that's your outcome. You're trying to get students who are here. You've scoped very well your population. So nice job on that, right? It's like just the folks who are living here over the summer. How do we get them to feel better, more included, more ready for you want to do? You've got a measurement tool. So like you're there. Like that's you're very close there. I think what you've got to do next is, and this is the harder part, it's like, how do you disentangle some of these hypotheses that you're making, right? Because you're making the hypothesis that by having them feel more confident in accessing it, will they really access it? There's probably, so yes, right? If you're thinking about a key driver diagram, let's just say having student needs, a basic human needs met, feeling confident is one thing. But if your food pantry is only open between 4:30 and 4:15, 4:30 and 5, those are some other issues, right? So just be careful that you're not sort of like, that you're clear about what you're trying to get done, sense of belonging, and then list out all the different possible things that could possibly stand in the way of that. And then that's what you would be testing against. But that's great.
If I might just add in, and I did sit on this group's meeting, and they had a lot of conversation, a lot of revision, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I really enjoyed being able to, talk through, and I know we discussed a lot. One of the challenges or questions that came up was, what makes it into the aim statement? And I know we have different language or we use different terminology. When I practice program evaluation, we'll talk about the differences between an output, which is like an immediate countable thing, right? Somebody attended a workshop, that was an output, versus an outcome. Like, what was a change in behavior, skill set, or attitude? And so I think if I recall correctly, the statement for this group started with, the well-being, community belonging. Those were some words that were in the statement. But as conversation shifted towards, well, does everything that's in the statement need to be directly measurable and quantifiable? If so, kind of taking it down a step into, well, number of students who feel confident accessing supports, right? Versus keeping all those things together and having a longer aim statement. So I know we shared templates in for the driver diagrams as well, right? And you don't need to necessarily include a list of all the primary drivers, secondary drivers, and tests of change in your aim statement. Like, that kind of fleshes out later. But I do think that that's something that will be top of mind for groups, is like, how much do you really need in there? In the aim statement, does everything need to be directly measurable, or is that the secondary exercise? Just so you can conceptualize and not kind of go round and round in circles. You know what I mean?
Is there another group that would like Juliet's advice on shaping that aim statement? What about group 4?
One would have to have an aim statement in order to shape it. Sorry, but that's really where we are, because we had to start all over. I have an idea, but I haven't even passed it by the group yet. So I don't feel comfortable sharing it with the wider group until the group agrees on it. So that's kind of where we are. I'm sorry. It's really a negative way to address this, but
where are you in concept land, I guess? I'm just interested because you talked about having a summit or something, or over the summer. I'm just curious as to, are you still focused on the transfer and advising as the topic issue, the concept?
Yeah, transfer in general. Yeah. And really, you can't separate transfer without advising at some capacity, because it's all just kind of interwoven. The impression I get is that a meeting would not be sufficient, is what I'll say. And so I had another idea. That's the one I'm talking about right now, that I would like to pass by the group, that would involve more than just a meeting, because as Juliet said, we don't want to say we just met and had some good discussion. So I don't feel comfortable sharing it with the whole group without the rest of my small group saying, yeah, let's do that. But Chris and Patty can jump in too if they'd like. I don't necessarily need to be the spokesperson.
I mean, I think when we meet from us, like, we'll be able to probably within one meeting redo the aim statement. And I think the idea is still what we want, the idea of increasing the percentage of students who earn an AA who are interested in going into a four-year college, that they're actually able to go through that pathway. So that interest, that idea is still there. So we'll see on. I'm looking forward to hearing your idea.
And I know where Chris sits, but Patty or Sandra, are either of you at the 2-year institution? Or maybe both, Sandra. Okay. Do you all do transfer intent forms? Do you ask your 2-year students what their intentions are?
Unknowingly, you just opened a whole big can of worms. So the KCTCS system does not, they have an intent to transfer. It's not framed that way, but an intent to transfer on the application for admission. We do not have any other current way to see who might be interested in transfer. The system, which is all 16 colleges, they're working on putting that into our student information system so that students can get that updated regularly. It used to be that we could pretty much rely on an AA or an AS, as those are our transfer students, but now with more and more students transferring the AAS, we can't do that anymore. And so we're having to pivot there as well. So currently there's no data besides what's listed on the application for admission, which is interesting to say the least.
Yeah. Well, so I talk to teams about this all the time, right? Like when the student was applying, they were what, like 16, and like that's like a lifetime ago. That's like a lifetime ago, a thought process about college that they have since it probably changed. I would say in just like because the project has such a short, between now and August, and I hear you on the like, what can you do? And it's just like very short. Even knowing that there's like a larger change coming from the system office, I would encourage you to think about how could you just do like what I call like paper pencil, just like a little bit. You don't have to survey everybody. What we have found is surveying to your students at the 15, 30, and 45 credit mark will give you much more detailed information about who's trying to transfer. When, just like surveyed broadly. Again, you don't have to do everybody. You could just do like a small group of students or something like that, just to kind of like get that little flywheel spinning, knowing there's a larger system change coming. But that's one idea if you're looking for something like very short. Most teams that take this back get it done in like 2 weeks. I mean, it's like very low effort, low lift, and yet that will really jumpstart your understanding of like, who's trying to transfer, what's the general percentage, and how can you connect those students to something perhaps over the summer, in Chris's shop or elsewhere, where they could get a little bit of assistance, even if it's not from a faculty.
Yeah. So, I think we're only in class another 2 weeks. So I think I'd have a hard time getting students to participate in and getting it through the IR process and all that in 2 weeks. Not that I'm going to say that's not a bad idea for future. And that's hopefully what we're attempting to get at with the regular updates with the data from the system side of things. I'll just go ahead and throw out what my idea was because we're on the same line. But again, the team hasn't supported this. So it's just, but like a summer melt campaign from KCTCS to the 4 years. I did text Chris. I know that he's on board but with the idea, but the rest of the team, I haven't had a chance to talk to.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
And so, at least then we know somebody is interested in going to WKU or wherever because they filled out an application. Then our group could work on sample communications that the 4 years could, tweak to match their information. And then I would be the KCTCS point of contact if a student had a KCTCS question, and then I could pull in anybody else. So that's the idea that I came up with while we're sitting here talking. So
yeah, no, I love it. Summer melt is real when you think about it from K-12 to higher ed. It's just as real higher ed to higher ed. And Chris has experience with this. I know from previous experience. He knows exactly what this happens. The other thing I would work with your 4-year institution partners is, because it is work to reach out to these students, and typically the students who are most likely to melt need the greatest amount of support. Working with your 4-year institutions to not just run a list of who's intending to transfer, who's applied, been admitted, who's applied, been admitted, and is not registered. That's the telltale sign that something is wrong, because folks will say yes, folks will say see you next week, but if they have not yet registered for courses for the fall semester, that's your little like red indicator that they could use some assistance, and that'll just shrink the number of students you're trying to get in contact with, which will make the lift a little easier.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It-
sounds awesome.
the measurement would be different per school because we would just have to do increase the, or decrease summer melt, increase the amount that actually enroll, because each school would already be different in the amount they get. So
Absolutely. And not to voluntold Mr. Christopher Jensen, but he or a member of his team can pull previous year melt rates. That's easy for them. They know exactly who said who was gonna come and who did not end up coming. That's an easy lift for them. Yeah, it'd be great. I mean, I think Sandra, that's a great idea. And I think you're gonna see with very small effort, in quotes, small-ish efforts, you're gonna see a really big ROI.
Anybody from, I know we had group 2 share around a challenge and getting buy-in, getting time, just kind of a very early stage challenge. Kasha, do you want to share any more?
I want to ask a question. So our project, they have all kinds of projects in mind. Coming up with a project, it's more of honing in a project, right? So, for the purposes of this, obviously we have a short turnaround. We have summer, right? I mean, like that's it. So whatever we're doing is pretty much going to have to happen in the summer. So for purposes of our aim statement of our goal, SMART goal, however you want to do it, are we to look at this as, let's say, I have a large statement of I want to increase fall to fall retention of adult learners enrolled at a community college by 10%. That's a goal, right? But for the project, I can only do one little piece of that. Like I'm never going to get that data. Okay, so for the first step towards achieving that goal, we are going to develop a 1-day summer bridge focused solely on adult learners and their needs. And another piece of that goal is we're going to offer a first year orientation or first year seminar course, whatever you guys want to call it, um, with a special population focused only on adult learners. And like that's as far as we can get. Yes, because I would have enrollment numbers, I would have who attended, and then who actually enrolled and who enrolled in the special sections. Like, is that sufficient?
So I would say where you started going down all the right pathways. You're not going to change the whole thing. You're not going to do an
No.
overhaul of how your entire colleges approaches something. Here's what I will tell you though. Hosting an event is not the best use of your time because you're going to be really betting the farm that like the right people come to the event at the right time. And it typically doesn't happen. I'll just be like really honest with you. It typically doesn't work because whatever days, times, accommodations that you have will not match people's schedule. So instead of doing an event, I would have you think about like what is in that process that you could change, right? Like what is, it looks like you've got adult ed students and you're trying to get them to enroll as post-secondary students. Is that I think that's how I'm reading it. Or
That's the original one, but there's no commitment.
yeah. So I think whatever you're thinking about, think about those, think about the steps in the process. And just like you said, pick one tiny step to change, right? So like when we're talking about like Sandra and Chris, right? There's already a process. Students finish their 2-year degrees every year. And then every year, and they apply, right? See, like Chris and they're not changing the process. They're just looking at one little tiny nugget and saying like, well, how could we do that a little differently, right? How could we, instead of just having these students that melt away, Sandra and her team are going to reach out and do a little summer melt intervention, right? So they're just doing like 1 square inch of that process. So this is where I would say, like, really getting clear on what is the process. I'm going to make something up, Kasha. Obviously, this is like, won't make any sense, but okay. So you've got like adult ed students, they end, maybe you're like 4 weeks out from the end of the, course work. And typically what happens is they just get a flyer on the last day that says like, hey, we'd love to have you as a full-time student. And the change you're going to do is, well, we're actually going to set something up where on the last day, an academic advisor pushes in and says to them, like, hey, you've actually earned 3 credits toward an AAS. And we're going to do on the spot admissions or just whatever, right? Like, just change one part of the process because you're totally right. You are not going to rewire your organization in 3 months. But you can rewire one part of a process and see what that
even
does.
smaller.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yes, it's focusing down even smaller.
Yes.
So we're very incremental.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I can work with that. This is a question for Lily. What the budget, the money part, the funds, what can the funds be used for, and what can't? Answer one of the questions. Can't,
Thank you for asking that, Kasha. Yeah, it's really designed as kind of a facilitation grant. So it's to help you plan, it's to help you do, it's to help you convene, it's to help you incentivize, it's to help you it's to get your partners to travel if there's an in-person activity. If you're doing a communications campaign and there's some kind of communications element that you're planning for, it's really a facilitation grant and not a programming grant. So like that's the kind of that differentiation that we're trying to make. Because I know I can't fund the projects, like that could be a really big endeavor, but I love the idea of finding your small test of change, making sure you understand your process through some process mapping, your stakeholders are engaged, your student voice is there, like those are the pieces that help us get to the right thing to move, the right test to do. And so that's kind of my short answer on what you can spend your money on. But just think, if this helps me accomplish my plan, then I want you to use the money for it,
Okay, that helps. Calling it a facilitation, that
Yeah.
helps. That puts it in a different bucket
Yeah.
than some of the other things. Okay. And I like the incremental change. I can work with this. I just need people to work with me. I can work with this. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see, what about group 5? Do you guys want to share anything? Leslie, are you still here? You said you were thinking about what tools to use. I'm really interested in any other questions or thoughts you might have, or questions for Juliet.
I don't know. I don't know if I have any additional questions. Right now, since again, it was a good brainstorming kind of a lot of different things in our first meeting. I think probably once we do meet with folks at Kia, and I'm happy to hear they're excited about kind of our thoughts about how we can scale it maybe statewide, or really use probably some great stuff they already have that maybe all of us just don't know about. I think that would be good, but I don't know if I have any additional questions. I have been taking some notes about our aim statement because I do think we're going to need to tighten it up. But I think we need probably a few more conversations, kind of to narrow that focus a little bit more, to tighten it up and to think about, I do like to think about how will we know it's successful. But then I also think about how will we know that it is sustainable. And then I think a lot about our conversation that we had on Monday about, sometimes we always think the best way to solve it is like with awareness or education. And not that that's not a factor, and I think this first gen with families, but we also have to think about how it is sustainable. And we tend to hit families a lot with a lot of stuff that first year, but don't think about years beyond that. So I think that's one thing our group talked about a lot. Like we have to think too beyond the first year, and a lot of us just working at that first year kind of retention space. But we're gonna have to think beyond that. So I don't know if I have any particular questions right now, other than I think there's still questions out there that we need to answer for this project as we tighten up our aim statement.
Juliet, I don't know if you had any comments or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think Leslie, to some of what you say, it's a process. Sometimes you gotta like think, kind of like throw spaghetti at the wall, like put it all in front of you and then be like, okay, like what in all of this do I really want to think about? I think the one thing I will say to you is just be careful about thinking about scale too early, right? Like if you don't yet know that it works, and I heard your concern about that, or like, how do I know this actually does anything? Right? You can always scale success. Scaling success is easy. People will pay you to do it. You can't roll back failure. Like it will just be out there and it will just not work, and students will just be let down, and families will just think about that. Just, like start really small, and then just know, like, yes, if you figure this thing out, scaling is easy. Scaling is a breeze, right? I think to your point about sustainability, this is where I would like double down on that, like thinking about your processes. The only thing that is long-term sustainable, you guys, is rewiring your processes. That's the only thing. There is no endless pot of money that will ever exist that you can just do programs until the end of time. That's also why I really push people, do not host a new orientation. Do not host an event. Those are sucks on resources that you will not have into infinity. Rewire your processes to be better and meet students and families where they are. I think I love that you have really focused in on financials. It is so important. It is so complicated. We don't do a good job, as you mentioned. Like, we don't communicate well. We don't make it very clear. We speak in gobbledygook to students and families. And then we're like, well, I can't believe they didn't figure it out. It's like, well, no one figures this stuff out. Some of us just literally get lucky and others don't, right? So how do you undo that? And then how do you build processes and systems? And I think this is partially where you're going, where you thought about, first generation and low income. The trick of all of this is if you build it for your neediest, let's put that in quotes, student, the person who is first gen, is low income, who like go down the list, has no one in their lives, just got, released from an institute, whatever, right? Like if you build the system for that person, everyone else benefits. If you build it for the most complex cases, the system actually just gets better for everybody else. So I also just appreciate and would call out that you're centering folks who need the system to work well for them. It will benefit everybody else, just given that you're making those changes. So those are, I would just say, like the other little nuggets that I throw out there. And then I just genuinely applaud you that you're going headfirst into the financial part. People tend to not touch this because it does it's like the third rail of higher education. It's like, it's the thing where, like, yes, the institution doesn't, you don't own all of it, right? You can't just make a Pell Grant happen. You can't just make, right? So I think people shy away from this area because it's complicated, but I think this is an area where we need like a lot more, good, smart people working on it. So let us know what you find too.
Okay, good, thanks. Well, that made me think about, okay, if we, so my notes were be cautious about scale too quickly, and then thinking about building a persona for, again, in quotes, our neediest, our first gen, our low income student, and probably all the things that could happen for this person. And so maybe that is thinking about the work that we did on Monday with solving for one, right? Could be a process that that we use. And we did think about, like, again, that sustainability piece of like the process of how we package financial aid, or just can we slip some information into that, or pull people, again, not another orientation, but how can we use the things that we already have in place to plant some different seeds about financial literacy throughout the year. But okay, no, thank you for walking me through that. I'm adding some notes to our document for the team.
Yeah, and you'll have to let me know where you end up, because like I said, there's not enough people working in this space, so there's not a lot of answers. To be honest with you, there's just like not, I would love to be like, oh, go look at this university. There's just not a lot of work that's being done in this space. So let us know.
Thank you.
Folks, and just wanted to, can folks hear me okay? Okay. I just wanted to add an additional consideration that we discussed in that group meeting, particularly around, and in connection to Juliet, your mention around sustainability and additional new initiatives. We also talked about the influx of communication and communication fatigue for students, right? So rather than thinking about, well, how do we launch a communication campaign to boost financial literacy because we're walking students through all these little nuances, right? Is there something we can do to tweak or clarify, change some of those policies so that they're not, like, it's not a 10-step process, right? And I think that is also reflective of some of our work in transfer as well, or statewide pathways, is it's not necessarily just bringing clarity to the complexity, but actually, being able to refine our policies and procedures so there's less that people need to constantly keep up with. Or getting to like the root of the issue, in other words.
I would just also add, Leslie, if you're trying, because I know there's so much in the financial side of the house. If you're looking for like one thing to change, one tool that I often give people, if they're just like, there's so many problems and everybody's always asking me about all of them. If you just have like your front desk or whoever like picks up the phone, whoever answers the phone or the emails or the texts or however you manage communication in the office, just have like for 3 days, just have them enter into like a spreadsheet, like what are the questions that parents or students are calling in about, and just do a very quick analysis, like, okay, yeah, 50% of our questions are about the FAFSA or whatever, right? Like, and then bucket that, because those are going to be like, it's a quick and dirty analysis, but it's like a very quick way to be like, okay, this is our high leverage point. If we can get people to stop calling us about the FAFSA deadline, it's because we will know that they actually have the information, they know when it's due or whatever, right? Like, I don't work in financial aid, so these are all bad examples, but you get my point. It can be just a quick and dirty way, because I know sometimes you go to these meetings and everyone piles on these lists of like, well, we have to fix 100 things. Just do like, hey, for 3 days, whoever's answering the phone or emails, just plot it and just be like, what are the most common questions? How do we just get that question to not be a question?
Perfect, thank you.
If you can figure out to get everybody to get the same piece of information, you will have a gem. So I wish you all the best for all of our 7 weeks. Can't even get my faculty to read a deadline.
Well, I know we got through 4 of our groups and Amanda had to run. So shoot, she was going to be next up for group 1. Is there anybody else in group 1 that's here today? I didn't think so. Okay, any other, just opening it back up for the last couple minutes that we have, any other questions that came up as you were listening? to Juliet share, or any other questions that you want to pose to the group? Okay. I know that Stephanie is going to be working with our host institutions on getting those MOAs so that we can get you the money. And that's going to be, it's a template MOA. So basically it's just about facilitation, participating in the community of practice, and sharing your final presentation back with us at the end, which will be in August. So I know that we'll send out a communication, especially to those that have already identified who the host partner is going to be. It could take up to a month to get this totally signed and everything, but it should not be a complicated one or a process. And then we will be able to, get that cash in your piggy bank. Anything that you don't spend during this project timeline, you would just return back to CPE. All right, any other comments to share, Stephanie?
I know we talked about this a lot, and I've still gotten some requests for Teams. So if you don't have access to Teams, or if you have questions about it, please get in contact with us sooner, or me rather, sooner rather than later, because work is continuing to take place there. But yes, anytime you have comments, questions, concerns, your group, typically it's the host institution who is coordinating the additional meetings. You're welcome to meet at your own availability. We're not dictating that you meet, monthly or bi-weekly. So please do what works best for your groups. Feel free to invite Lily or I if you feel like you could use some additional support, but we need not be at each individual one. And we're happy to check in with you at our next COP meeting. Thanks so much for sticking around and coming out today.
Yeah, and our next meeting, just to throw it out there, is May 21st. Again, it's at noon, and I'm just going to put it in the chat. That is with Jack Hess from our Civic Lab partner. And so, Civic Lab was just with us on Monday, as I think Leslie referenced. I know Laura was there. Kasha, we really talked about, Patty, were you there too? Yes. Okay. Yeah. And it was a really fantastic workshop day, all about identifying a problem and solving it for one in order to extend to many. So hopefully some of those projects can align, or at least the tools, are a refresh. So Jack will be with us in May, and hopefully, you're seeing some real good progress and momentum. Don't hesitate to reach out if you're facing any kind of barrier. I think that that's what this group is all about, is helping, identify those and help move through. So, all right, but I will send out the recording from today, just in case you or your teammates would like to fast forward to a specific section or, specific advice. Juliet, thank you so much. The wisdom was amazing. Appreciated it so much. And I think that our projects have really moved forward today. So, all right, everyone, have a great rest of your week.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Yeah, everybody.